Courtland Sutton, let's start there. Broncos beat reporters are going back and forth at this point, saying he's not going to get traded. Oh, he is going to get traded. Oh, the Pittsburgh Steelers are calling. Oh, they're not calling. At this point, he hasn't shown up to OTAs or voluntary workouts. Doesn't plan to, it doesn't seem. The Broncos are not negotiating a trade with him or not negotiating a contract with him. He's been very open on social media about how he is not going to attend anything until he gets a new deal. And that obviously starts or sparks the conversation and the speculation of, is he being traded and should the Pittsburgh Steelers give him a phone call? I'm going to say this. I don't think there's any chance the Pittsburgh Steelers trade for Courtland Sutton at this point in time. And to be quite frank, it's because it's very easy to see why they would not. Because Courtland Sutton is worth $18 million, but he wants to be worth more. And the Pittsburgh Steelers, well, they're not looking to pay more for a Courtland Sutton. So before I dive into all of it, let me ask you this. Courtland Sutton for $25 million or Brandon Aiyuk for $25 million? Who are you paying for?
Well, when you put it like that, there's one obvious answer in Brandon Aiyuk. So I'm not going to even try to give the other name any light in that discussion, because of the two, it's 100% Brandon Aiyuk.
It's Brandon Aiyuk. And where we find ourselves is a month ago, we were talking about how the Pittsburgh Steelers will trade for Courtland Sutton, or could trade for Courtland Sutton, because he will be a much cheaper commodity. He will cost less in exchange. You could probably get him for a third or a fourth round pick, and then you will pay him significantly less money than you will pay a guy like Brandon Aiyuk or Deebo Samuel. Where we sit today is you will give up less. You will exchange less for Courtland Sutton. You will give him a third or fourth round pick to the Denver Broncos in exchange for their wide receiver. And you will pay over $20 million per season, because Courtland Sutton has made it known that he is not showing up unless he gets a contract extension. And I have a hard time believing that he's going to show up with an offer that is less than the $18 million that he is currently making. So let me revise the question. Courtland Sutton for $20 million or Brandon Aiyuk for, let's say, $28 million?
I'm still sticking with Brandon Aiyuk at that point. The ceiling is just too high compared to Courtland Sutton. And I do think that in a vacuum, when you're looking simply at the player, Courtland Sutton is a great addition to the team. But when you look at everything outside of the vacuum, including $20 million, including not coming to camp or optional team practices unless he gets that, I think at that point you start looking at Brandon Aiyuk and say, all right, the extra $8 million is worth the added ceiling and the added, impact for what he brings off the field as well.
Yes, look at 100%. 100. That's exactly where the Steelers lie. Is you've hit the point where Brandon Aiyuk gives you everything you're looking for in a wide receiver. An immediate wide receiver one, a superstar of the future, a guy that potentially could be one of the best wide receivers in football if he develops or continues to develop and you give him the tools around you. That's what the Steelers were looking for. When we started this hunt, when everybody started digging into the witchcraft of, oh, this is it, man, we are going to find it. Brandon Aiyuk was it. It was the easiest selection you could possibly make. Yeah, give up everything. You want to know why? Because you're getting a superstar. The Pittsburgh Steelers never once probably had the thought of, yeah, well, we're just going to settle for a guy that we're going to pay just as much for. Maybe a little bit less, maybe $8 million less a year, but we're going to still pay a boatload of money for a guy that essentially is a little bit better than Deontay Johnson probably and costs way more than Deontay Johnson. It just doesn't make any sense. You're getting the leadership. I get it. You're getting the veteran commodity that you're looking for in a Courtland Sutton. I understand both of those things, but just when you're looking at the player and the price tag of where the Pittsburgh Steelers stand and where the Denver Broncos stand with Courtland Sutton, there's just nobody who could sit around and say Courtland Sutton's worth $20 million a year and the Pittsburgh Steelers, a team that never makes moves that do not benefit them more than the other team, is going to make a move for Courtland Sutton that is just way too expensive. Even if it's for a third round pick, even if it's for a fourth round pick, it's just not going to happen. If there's going to be a jump, it's going to be a significant jump. It's going to be the Treylon Burks. It's going to be the John or the John Mechie. It's going to be the Noah Brown. It's going to be those guys, which, I mean, Houston continues to just add every wide receiver they could possibly find. So at some point, they got to give up somebody. I don't know who that somebody's going to be, but at some point, I would imagine the Pittsburgh Steelers at least make a phone call. But I don't see it being anybody in between. I don't see it being that Courtland Sutton. I don't see it being those middle of the gap, still going to be expensive guys, because the Steelers are either shooting for the stars, which I think is behind us. I think Brandon Aiyuk and Deebo Samuel are on the back burner at this point, and they're just going to drop to, okay, let's get a wide receiver 3 and feel really good about it. And I think Treylon Burks makes a lot of sense. I think John Mechie makes a lot of sense. I think Noah Brown makes a lot of sense. I think Robert Woods makes a lot of sense. I don't think Courtland Sutton makes any sense whatsoever. And I think at this point, every time somebody talks about Courtland Sutton or brings up Courtland Sutton, I just sit here and think we're shooting, we're spitballing against a wall, hoping something sticks, but this one's not going to stick. It's just, I'm past the Courtland Sutton. Am I crazy for saying that, or are we feeling maybe Courtland Sutton is a lost cause here, not a real thing for the Pittsburgh Steelers?
I'm not going to lie. When you laid it out in the pre-show text chain that we have, I said, really, he's against Courtland Sutton. But when you lay it out the way that you just did, it makes a lot of sense. You know, at first I think of Courtland Sutton and what he is over a Van Jefferson, what he does for the Steelers this year, but the added incentive of that much money coming in, even if it's only when you're trading and the acquisition cost is as low as a third or fourth round pick, the money that you're going to pay a Courtland Sutton is the money that you're going to want to pay a George Pickens in a couple of years. And you don't want to bring in somebody who is not as good as him, but getting paid more than him. And I can see why that would be not beneficial for the Steelers. So, you know, when you lay it out like that, I do have to agree with you that it just doesn't make any sense right now.
Just right. If things change, you know, cool. You know, if the Steelers find themselves where, screw it, whatever. But it's just, you know, you're going to extend Courtland Sutton for 2 years. You're going to have him for 3 years under an expensive price tag. And I'm sorry, it's just not where you stand if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers. You could get cheaper options. You know, Treylon Burks, I read something today where Treylon Burks could go to the Pittsburgh Steelers. It was by ESPN's Bill Barnwell, saying a 6th round pick, and Tennessee takes on 6 of his $8 million guaranteed left on his rookie deal. You're telling me I don't know how realistic that is, but I think that if that's somewhat of an option, any slice of an option, you're going that over Courtland Sutton any day, even if Treylon Burks has like 650 career yards in 2 seasons. I don't care. You know, he's 24 years old and he costs nothing. That's what the Steelers are looking for. They're going to bank on the rest of it. If it was a Brandon Aiyuk, awesome. Anything else, they're just hoping to find somebody who could fill a role, you know, and you could find that in a lot of places. You don't got to shoot for the stars in a guy like Courtland Sutton. Just doesn't have to happen.